I'm teaching the past the best way I know how, by slowly destroying my future one bite at a time. Now I got a burger today that could resurrect Elvis, and another burger that could kill him again.
Oh, don't get excited.
And I got charcoal burning and burgers so juicy they should come with a towel and a safe word. Damn. Now it's hot as hell out here in Kentucky, and I'm sweating like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. But it's Independence Day, and I'm serving up classic Americana with a side of regret.
It's just the American way.
Hey yourself, you know it's a must. Gonna have my friends in Jesus.
Hey, I'm Joe. This is Fork Embers. I mix a little bit of barbecue with some bad decisions and just enough history to make it seem like I planned this whole video. Today we're talking about two burgers that shaped the waistline of America. One is thick and juicy, looks like it owns a Craftsman tool set, and it gives unsolicited advice at cookouts. The other one, thin and crispy, and it gets smashed harder than your Uncle Scott at an open bar with a DD.
Put that on your iPad and smoke it.
Today we're throwing down on both of them. We're gonna be talking barbecue, history, cookouts, and how these burgers became entangled into the Stars and Stripes. It's really a love letter to the classic Americana of the 1950s burger. And by the end of it, I'm gonna be sweating like a hog sitting shotgun in a 72 El Camino with a busted AC and no radio. Also, we live in a free country. You can vote, you can grill in your driveway, and you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So, go ahead and do that, you know, as an act of liberty. And if you're feeling particularly patriotic, go ahead and check out my Patreon, links in the description. That's like finding fries in the bottom of the bag. But it's hotter than jalapenos and church shoes out here, and I'm gonna grill something for y'all anyways. So let's go. Ooh, it's hot, baby. Damn. So, we're gonna start with the burger that we all grew up with, that classic American grilled burger. Now, in the early 1800s, we had German immigrants coming over to the United States, and they brought with them something called a hamburger steak. Now, hamburger steak was nothing special. It was pretty much minced steak. It didn't have no ketchup, no mustard, no cheese, no bun. It was essentially like a fancy meatloaf. Speaking of beef, we're gonna be going with an 80-20 mixture of ground chuck. 80-20 really is that perfect ratio of fat to meat. Too much fat and you end up with a lot smaller patty than you put on the grill. And not enough fat, you end up with a dry patty. The biggest problem people have when they make grilled burgers is they puff up. And we don't want that. And the reason that happens is because they compact the meat, make it so condensed, you get steam that gets trapped inside of the burger and it actually swells up because that steam can't escape. Think of like sourdough bread, for example. We don't want to work this burger that much. Get you a bench scraper, and we want to work it into a patty shape that we like. I like mine decently thick, but not too bad. I'd say probably 1/2 an inch, 3/4 an inch. What I like to do is make sure the center is just a little lower than the outside, but we're not doing that divot trick. You shouldn't have to do that if you don't overwork this patty. Let's get back to our story. Late 1800s, we got doctors actually promoting the health benefits of Salisbury steak. This was because Dr. James Salisbury believed that everyone's digestive and inflammation problem stems from eating too many vegetables. That's a doctor I wouldn't mind knowing. But with this advice came the popularity of the meat grinder. You know, doctor says it's good for you, we gotta do it. I mean, right? Now it's way more accessible, ground beef is popular, right? And it's ready to be shaped into pretty much anything you want. Now what we actually want to do with this after we get it patted is we want to throw it in the refrigerator. Refrigerating it allows it to kind of keep that shape, and it also does help with keeping the burger from puffing up. Because if you don't refrigerate it, you don't have a consistent temperature throughout, the outside can actually cook a little bit faster. We're also not going to salt it because we don't want excess moisture being drawn out of this thing. And if you salt too early, you can actually cure the meat a little bit, almost giving it like a sausage effect. So let's go ahead and refrigerate this and we'll move on. Now we want to make sure that we let that beef rest for at least 30 minutes. What I'm doing here is I'm prepping the ingredients for this. And what we're gonna go with, very basic, very simple. We're doing tomatoes sliced very thinly, and then we're gonna do onion and dill pickle chips, and we're gonna slice those thinly. Sometime along the 19th century, minced meat found its soulmate, which was the bun. Nobody agrees how it happened. Nobody knows how it happened. But what we do know is at the 1904 World Fair in St. Louis, the humble hamburger got its big break. I mean, that World Fair is like the Coachella for food. Now, that was in 1904. 2 years later, Upton Sinclair drops a bomb on the United States called the jungle. The jungle was supposed to be used to expose the horrible working conditions of immigrant laborers. But what really ended up happening is people hyper-fixated on the exposure of the meatpacking industry. It was disgusting. I mean, you had rotten meat being ground up into your ground beef. You had unsanitary working conditions, even rumors of people falling into the meat grinder. I mean, if that's not enough to make you say, hell no, I'm not eating that, I don't know what is.
Silent breed is people!
It freaked people out, and ground beef was no longer sexy in 1906. Now, the distrust of ground beef continued into the 1920s when White Castle came onto the scene, and they brought with them transparency, that spick and span clean image. They promoted that they ground their own beef, and they slowly started to restore the faith into the humble hamburger. White Castle really paved the way for your big conglomerates like McDonald's. Now, even with all of that, the real transformation of the burger, or the backyard burger as we know it, happened right after World War II. You had soldiers coming home and they were moving into suburbs. And the American dream that people were fed is buy a tidy little house, you have a white picket fence, a freshly cut lawn, and a grill in the backyard. Then in 1952, a guy named George Stephen invented the Weber kettle. You might have heard of that. I think I've done a couple videos on it. Now, everyone was a barbecue master. So you got fireworks overhead, a beer or bourbon in hand, kids running through the yard through the sprinkler, and burgers sizzling on the grill. I mean, that was as American as it gets. I think that's enough pickles. Now that we got the ingredients prepped, let's get these burgers back out. We'll salt them, and I'll talk about how we're gonna use the Weber kettle. So these have been in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes, and we're gonna go ahead and season them. So all they would have thrown on here in the 1950s is a little bit of salt, do a little bit of pepper, and these are ready to throw on the grill. But I guess I need to tell you how we're gonna do that. So what you need to do is very simple. I'm making 2 burgers. I'm not using a ton of charcoal. Get you a charcoal chimney, fill it halfway full of charcoal, and light it with one of those little tumbleweeds that I use, or wax cubes, whatever you got. And you're gonna set the Weber kettle up for a 2-zone cooking. One side's got charcoal, one side doesn't have charcoal. Once you got your grill set up, you go ahead and throw these bad boys on there, and I'll show you how we cook them. All right, guys, got this grill rolling with a 2-zone setup. Now, the way I like to do these burgers, got me a cold side on this side and a cool side, so direct, indirect. We're gonna set these on the indirect heat side. They're pretty much gonna cook for the entirety on this side. Towards the end, once they reach about 150, 155, we'll sear them off, throw some cheese on top of them, and it's that simple. What we're gonna do in the meantime, while those burgers cook, is we're gonna toast these buns. Throw those right over top of the coals. We just wanna get a nice little toast. In the 1950s, this is probably how they were doing it in the backyard. I like to move them around a little so they don't get too charred in one spot. So that's about all the toast that we're looking for right there. I didn't spray these with oil or anything. You could if you wanted to, but we're trying to keep it true to how, you know, my father and grandfather would have been making it, and same as yours. Put this vent right over top of these burgers. And that should be all she wrote for about 15 minutes. Oh. All right, it's time to check these. Yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead and start searing them off. Now, it won't take very long. These things are mostly cooked. So all I want to do is slide that burger over. Don't even really need to pick it up, and just let them sear off for maybe a minute per side, and they'll be good to go. Ooh, I love those little flare-ups. You're gonna get a little bit towards the end, but not anything like you would if you were cooking directly over the coal the whole time, because a lot of that fat is actually already cooked out. Now, we're using very classic American cheese slices. These are Kraft singles. I know everyone likes to throw fancy cheeses and shit, but you can't beat the meltability of this cheese. You know, they call it this processed cheese, but you can't beat that cheese on a burger. It melts if you look at it. Now that cheese is melted perfectly. We're gonna go ahead and set that on the plate. Let's roll. Now, it's ready to dope the bun, which is a term I got from George Moats. His YouTube channel is awesome. He talks about burgers specifically, but the man's like the godfather of burgers. I had to switch over to a beer, man. That damn bourbon, it was too hot out here for it. So this is how they would have dressed it in the 1950s. No fancy aiolis, you know, no truffle, no nothing. They start with some mustard on the bottom bun. Then they take some pickles. They would layer those on the bottom bun. Put as many as your heart desires. Take your burger, crown it. Next, they would have done ketchup. We want to take some of these onions, place those on top of that. Take one of these thinly sliced tomatoes. You can do 2 of those actually. Then iceberg lettuce, no fancy green leaf lettuce or any of that shit. You crown it. And that right there is exactly what your grandpa and your daddy grew up on and how they were making them in the 1950s. Whew, man, that's a thick burger. And you can actually see where we kind of indirect cooked it. It almost got that really red tone that you get when you smoke a burger. It's not smoked though. Let's not get it twisted. Shoo-wee. That burger right there is very hard to beat. Now, this is tradition on a bun. It's what we grew up with. It's what generations before us grew up with in their backyard. But America's got 2 speeds. They got that classic, nostalgic 1950 Americana, and then they got the greasy spoon, the dive diners. We're talking smash burgers. So who gets credit for the smash burger? We don't know. Lots of people try to take credit for it. Lots of lore about how it came to be. It's one of the most popular burgers on the planet. You had short order cooks in these diners across the United States that were just trying to get lunch out the door as fast and cheap as possible. So who knows, you know, where the origins of this burger comes from. One establishment actually gets credit for creating the smash burger, and it actually happened here in Kentucky, in Ashland, Kentucky, a little further east than I am, and it was at a place called Dairy Cheer. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about the meat we're gonna be using. Same as the backyard burger, we're gonna go with an 80-20 mixture. Perfect amount of fat to meat ratio. We also measure these out to be about 3 ounces a piece. So you get about 6 ounces on a burger total. Take those and form them into balls. I don't like to compress these too much either. The reason for that is because when I smash these out, I like for there to be little pockets of air to where it can get more crispy bits from the grease. You'll see what I'm saying when we actually smash this bitch out. In the late 1940s, Bill Culverston and his partner, David Phipps, they joined together, opened up their first stand in Ashland, Kentucky. They operated under a Dairy Queen license, actually. So essentially, they were a stand that served soft-served ice cream. But Bill Culverston, he wanted to serve hot dogs and burgers. Dairy Queen wasn't having it. They wasn't happy about it. They said, you can't do that under our license. So they said, go to hell, we'll start our own thing. So they dropped the Dairy Queen license and they opened Dairy Cheer. We're gonna start prepping these onions real quick. We're gonna do half moons. I don't need both sides of these onions. And we just want really fine onions. I think that's about all I need right there. We're just making one burger, so. Sometime in the mid 1950s, it said that an employee of Dairy Cheer, son of a bitch, come on, actually invented the smash burger. And the way he did that is he took a number 10 can of beans, which is about 7 pounds of beans, and he smashes the beef onto the griddle, creating the smash burger, which is kind of crazy because nobody knows why he did it. I feel like it was intentional. And when they tasted it, they were like, this is a game changer. Customers loved it. Turns out, smashing that beef patty against that hot griddle allowed more of the surface of the meat to touch the griddle, caramelizing it, allowing the fat to pretty much fry the beef patty. I mean, that's a match made in heaven right there. And of course, places like White Castle and McDonald's, they had thin patties, but they weren't smashed patties. The difference is they were pre-formed and they weren't smashed. That smashing effect is really where the magic happened. You fast forward to 2007, Shake Shack, Smashburger, they're selling these things nationally. It goes from being a regional trick to now it's a national revolution. Of course, a lot of people think that this is a newer trend, the Smashburger, because it's all over social media. Really, it might have been one of the first burgers ever made, and now it's just being revitalized because of social media. Now that we got everything prepped, let me show you how simple this thing is to make. And if you blink, you might miss it. Okay, so I'm trying to replicate this thing as accurately as I possibly can. So we're gonna let this thing get hot. We're not using any oil, and the bun we're using is a soft white bun. They wouldn't have been using fancy brioche buns in 1950s in diners. If you grew up poor like me, we called it a wish bun, you know, because you would get a piece of meat with no bun, and you wish you had a bun. So there's really nothing there. Let's get a different one. That one was cut all kinds of fucked. I have a Blackstone griddle, one of those travel size ones. I didn't feel like getting it out of storage. And I'm making one burger, but if you're making this for your family on 4th of July, get you a Blackstone. Let's get our salt ready. We got our onions ready. What I'm gonna do is I wanna set this beef on there in a ball. That's it. Leave it there for, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. Just press it down a little bit. What I like to see happen is just a little quarter size of caramelization. I'm gonna show you why. That's a pro tip right there. All right, so now we take it, flip it. Now what'll happen when I press this, I don't need parchment paper. I smash mine out pretty damn thin because what I want is those little air pockets you see there. And I'll let it cook on this side until it pretty much turns gray and it's cooked through. And then you go ahead and season it. You can season it while it's in a ball too. I know a lot of people do that, but season it with just salt. And then when this turns brown on the top side, we'll flip it over with our cheese on there. This is actually a drywall scraper. Don't worry, I haven't used it for drywall. Flip that over, and that is a beautiful caramelization. Now the cheese we want to use is Kraft single cheese, same as we did for the backyard burger. We'll take some of these onions and just toss it on top there. It's going to allow the steam from that burger and that cheese to kind of soften that onion a little bit. We can go ahead and turn off the heat here, and we're ready. Whew. If you're doing this inside, you're gonna smoke the house up. Go ahead and warn the wife. Let's go ahead and dope this bun though. First, what they would have done is mustard. Put that down on the bottom. Then take those thinly sliced pickles, put those all across the bun. Place that right on top. And now you got one of the simplest, best burgers you'll ever eat. This thing right here is phenomenal. Man, that right there just hits different. It brings back memories from the 50s that I didn't even live through. I just know my trainer is watching these videos. He's like, God damn it, Joe. But I promise I'm just taking a couple bites. Shut the camera off.
You know it's a must. Gotta have a friend in Jesus.
So, that wasn't some gourmet reinvention. You know, we didn't have any aioli, no brioche, no truffle, just straight up nostalgic classic Americana, good ass burgers. I mean, this curated the backyard cookouts, the dive diners, and even your family's predisposition to high cholesterol. Lastly, there's a link in the description to go over to my Patreon and get the show notes. I call it the afterburn. Just something to, you know, make you laugh a little bit. And any recipes or any techniques, I'll put them over there, so go check it out. I'm Joe, this is Fork Embers. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, go grill something. And remember, back up, Terry.